Today I'm back in the Peugeot 5008, and actually that is something I'm quite happy about. I've gone on and on about how good the new 3008 is, and when I first drove the 5008 I thought, well, this is a 3008 with 2 extra seats. It is literally identical. It looks more or less the same, i.e. it's really quite good, and it drives more or less the same, i.e. it's really quite good. And where did those two cars come from? I mean, Peugeot has made some good cars over the years, but they've also made some very bad cars over the years. And I don't think many people saw the 3008 or the 5008 coming, not least some of Peugeot's competitors, who I think were probably quite surprised when they made an SUV that was actually not just as good as to compete, but better than some as well. That is why I'm happy to be in this car again. It's just really good. Now let's break this specific car down. This is a 5008 GT line. It's second from top in the model range, and it will set you back £28,195. Now that is quite a lot of money, but remember you are getting quite a lot of car. The interior is brilliant. I always seem to start off with the interior from a 3008 or a 5008, but there's a reason for that. These leather seats, now they're optional on this model because it's not top spec. They're £1,990, which is quite a lot of money, but they are excellent. The screen that makes up the instrument cluster that you can change depending on what you want to see is fantastic. And the design of the centre console is tip-top. But what makes this such a good place to be isn't just the fact that the materials have been used in different ways. I mean, look at the carpet on the doors and the dashboard, for example. Or the fact that the materials are so much better than they would have been on a Peugeot 5-10 years ago. But the design is so unique, and so much of what you see in here is standard. Outside, it is more or less identical to the 3008 until you get to the back end. It doesn't swoop down in quite the same way. It's just that little bit longer, that little bit taller, to make room for those 2 extra seats. As a 7-seater, I mean, bravo Peugeot. I mean, I would take my hands off the steering wheel to clap and congratulate you properly, but it's probably a little bit dangerous. But a 7-seater 10 years ago would have looked like a minibus, and this, it's at completely different ends of the design spectrum. And now I'm going to do something I've never done before. Now my job is to convey to you what a car is like to drive, whether that's a Fiat 500 or a McLaren. But as a 7-seater, people will complain if I don't talk about or show you the 2 extra seats. Or at least that's what happened the last time I drove this car. I got an earful. So, here goes. The rear seats fold up from a flat boot floor. It's very simple to do. But do not believe that these seats are for anything other than children. I mean, you could get an adult in there at a push, but it is not going to be comfortable, as I will now demonstrate with a 6'2" adult. Now, does that look comfortable? Does that look sustainable over a long journey? No, it does not. So, bear that in mind. The rear seats are for kids, not for adults. This car has the 1.2 litre 3-cylinder turbo. It's got 130 brake horsepower and 170 foot-pounds of torque. 0 to 62 miles an hour takes 10.9 seconds, and the top speed is 117 miles an hour. Aside from the fact you can hear it's a 3-cylinder, it doesn't actually feel like a 3-cylinder. It's very smooth, it picks up well, it's got a decent amount of torque, and you'll get about 52 miles to the gallon, which in a car that is as big as this sounds pretty respectable. But keep in mind the fact that there are more powerful engines in the range, and they're there for a reason. And if you're going to be moving around lots of stuff and lots of people regularly, it might start to struggle a little bit. It feels fine to me when I've got maybe one other person in the car with me, but beyond that, I probably want a bit more power. The gearbox is a 6-speed manual in this car, and I quite like it. I think it's quite nice to use. But if there's ever an argument for an automatic gearbox, it's probably quite as strong in the 5008. You can get a 6-speed automatic or an 8-speed automatic. The steering is quite light, but you can beef up the weight by pressing the Sport button down here on the centre console. And what that does is, aside from making the steering quite a bit heavier, it makes the throttle response quite a bit sharper, and it also pumps synthesised engine noise through the speakers. So, allow me to demonstrate. If I put it in sport, if I put it in second gear, you should be able to hear a difference. Hear that? It's interesting. That's all I will say. It is interesting. Does it make the car feel a little bit sporty to drive? Yes, in a way it does. Of course it does. It changes the noise. It messes with your brain and makes you think you're in something that's a bit louder. Does it actually change the way it drives? Probably not. If you're standing outside on the pavement and I drive past in sport mode, it sounds sporty in here, but on the outside it's still a 3-cylinder turbo, 7-seater, being revved very hard. The 5008 feels pretty much exactly the same as the 3008. It's just got 2 extra seats, and that is no bad thing at all. The 3008 is really, really good, and this is more of the same. If you want a 7-seater, this is probably one of the strongest packages out there.